Hey, good morning everyone. Tractorman 44 here. Hey, this is actually the first day of actually starting to try to clean up this Galloway serial number 10931, 5 horsepower. I'm sure it's a make and break engine. It's not going to be a throttle governed at all. But at any rate, I've got a lot to learn about these, trust me. Now I said originally that I didn't know a whole lot about them, and I really don't know. I do know some basics and everything, and the thing about it, whenever you do come into something that's been set for so long without running, and it's been a long time since this thing ran, there's just the basic maintenance that you got to do. Like you got to make sure everything gets grease, gets oil, everything is free, you know, to move whenever everything rolls around, so you don't tear anything up. And it is stamped on the front, right next to the serial number, 5 horsepower. So this is definitely a 5 horsepower Galloway. But anyway, I said that I'd go ahead and show you the original electric box. So here it is right here. It's got complete with asphalt shingle on top. Of course, I'm sure that was kind of retrofit, but it's got its own buzz coil in here. It's not a Model T, a typical Model T buzz coil, but it's just a standard coil. And it's just got a bare wire with an alligator clip right here. I'm sure that's going to go to ground. And it's got another insulated, whoop, actually broke off of there, actually came out from the nut. It's got another insulated lead with an alligator clip on it as well. So if you look on the end of this, look at this real neat switch right here. This will actually provide power to the igniter, and this here will shut off, cut power, and it'll go ahead and coast to a halt. At least that's my theory anyway. So what I'll do is I have to double check and see if there is resistance across that coil. If there is, we should be good to go. The rest of this compartment is merely for a battery. That's going to be what they use to power this. So I got to figure that out for sure. And that'll be down the road just a little ways. I ain't quite ready for that yet. And also said I was going to show you the original gas tank. So here's the original gas tank with the flanges. Now it mounts right here in the back at the back end of the motor, behind the crankshaft where the rod bearing and stuff makes. And here's the pretty nasty solder joint that the pipe actually came out of to go up to the mixer, or the rudimentary carburetor. Now this obviously needs a little bit of work. Probably ain't going to use it at all. Might have to make my own. These are all standard joints that I have absolutely no problem in fabricating. Whether it's going to turn out as nice as this one though, I can't tell you that. But time will tell. Like I just said a minute ago, you know, the basic things about working on the old mechanical components is to make sure everything is lubricated. So you can see right here, this right here is cleaned up. I went ahead and pulled this out already, just to get an idea of what the original grease is. And you got to stop and think. I've had this thing for close to 15 years, and the fellow I got it from was nearing retirement, and his grandfather was the original owner, and he said he hadn't seen it run since he was a pretty young man. So this thing has obviously been setting for many, many years, and so it definitely needs some service. This was originally set up on a set of trucks with a buzzsaw on it. So this is one of the few that's actually designed to run forward or backwards. But at any rate, I went ahead and pulled these guys loose. Now what these guys are, for those of you that might not be familiar, these are the main bearings on the crankshaft, and this is the crankshaft, rod bearings, and all this, the timing mechanism and everything. But these guys here are your grease cups. Now, I've already got this cleaned up and free to operate, but this is filled up with grease. I got to clean the rest of the inside of this out anyway, and then pack it with new grease. And then you fill this up, and then you tighten this down, and as you tighten it down, it'll force a little bit of grease out of this and right down into the main bearing. All right? And so periodically during the course of the day, you just give a little bit of a turn, a couple of times during the day, and that's how you lubricate your main bearings. So we're going to go ahead and pop this one apart here. I've just gotten it kind of cleaned up and put a little lubricant on there so I can back the threads up. We're going to pop this apart and take a look and see what you got for grease in this old thing here. Like I said, I worked on it just to get it broke loose. This thing was really stuck. So here's your grease cup right here. Now, I guarantee this grease is from probably the 1940s or thereabouts. Now this is not quite hard as a rock. But there you go. Now we're going to go out to business getting this all cleaned up, and we're going to go ahead and put some fresh grease in it. Well, then from here, we'll go ahead onto this grease cup up here, and it's a very small grease cup. I don't know why, because this is kind of important, because this is your main connecting rod, or your only connecting rod. So it should have a little bit of a bigger cup on it, in my estimation. But it doesn't matter, because it doesn't take that much grease. Once it melts and becomes essentially liquid, it gives you your liquid film inside. It'll lubricate for a pretty long time before it goes away. So let's clean this thing up and we'll be back. Okay guys, as you can tell, everything's looking kind of shiny in here because I got everything all oiled and lubricated. These are all packed with brand new grease and everything, and it's speed and everything's doing fine. To just add more grease, you just kind of give those a little bit of a turn, you know, partial turn throughout the course of the day, like I said before. But you can see I got oil all over the place. If you look right here, you can tell that there's something that's actually broken. What this is a, it's an actual oil drip. This is supposed to be a glass enclosure, they vary in size from little bitty all the way up to really, really big. And it provides a slow drip, a continual drip of oil through this port right here and right down in onto the skirt of the piston for lubrication during the time it's running. Now this here, I knew it was broken whenever I got it because the old boy told me he broke it himself. But this is the brass end of it here. But I'll have to get a replacement into that. But for now, I just got oil all dumped in there, pistons all lubricated, and we're all going to town as far as having everything where it wants to do what it wants to do. I even got the igniter to where the igniter wants to trip right about the time I get it top dead center, right at top dead center, or maybe a little bit afterwards. And so provided the igniter's got a little juice to it, it should fire at that particular point. However, let me tell you something. I'll tell you a story. Now, the old man always said whenever we're working along, when you get into a situation you can't get beyond, he'd always say we struck a stump. And I think that comes from his days plowing with horses and mules and stuff like that. It ain't like the big old farm tractors, you know. You hit a stump, you just break something, or you churn up the old rod of stump and keep on going. But with a team of mules or a team of horses, you strike a stump, you know, you come to a halt. So, at any rate, I done struck a stump. I'm going to show you exactly what I found on this thing, and probably the reason why my friend's grandfather quit using it years ago whenever he quit using it. Now when you look at this thing, it's really quite simple, you know, as compared to modern engines and everything, you know, but it can be a little bit of a pain in the butt. This big horizontal rod right here, this is the, I don't even know what the proper term of it is, but that's your igniter rod, or the rod that has to push forward and cause this guy here to flick this igniter right here. You see this thing flicking back and forth? That's the actual igniter that takes the voltage from the battery, shorts it out, and creates a spark whenever it breaks that. So as this engine slows down, this igniter has to be tripped again, you know, so that it'll go ahead and fire a couple of times and then coast a little bit, you know, while it doesn't need to have a combustion cycle. So at any rate, that all operates through a series of roller bearings and fly weights and stuff back here, for lack of a better term. But when you rotate this wheel, if it's running in the normal direction, you can see the shaft moving forward and backwards. And of course, if the engine's up to speed, it's not going to trip and ignite fuel. So it'll be in the coast mode. This guy will be down because the camshaft back there is not in line with what it needs to be in line with in order to make this trip the igniter. Okay, so then whenever it does slow down, if you watch, it'll go back and see how the cams are out, this trip is up. Here's your catch on the igniter. Now listen really, really close. When it comes forward, watch, see it move, and you heard it trip right there. Okay, the piston was right at or very near to top dead center, or just a few degrees afterwards. Okay, now here's what I found, and here's where I struck a stump. All right, this is your intake and exhaust valve right here. Intake valve in the center, exhaust valve right there. That all operates off of this mechanism just fine and dandy. Okay, and this is your rocker arm right here, just like you have in any engine. This is your rocker arm. Okay, well, as I'm messing with this, I kind of realized that there was a bit of a problem, so I went ahead and pulled this guy out right here. When I pulled the pin out on the rocker arm, I'm going to pull the rocker arm off. Well, it should pivot right out on this point right here. However, if you take a look at this, check it out. The eyelet right here, that should be around this pivot, this pin right here, is snapped off. That thing has been snapped off, I don't know how many years ago, just as black can be. It probably even ran a little bit with it broken, because it is a little bit rounded off a little bit. So right now, I have literally struck a stump. I'm dead in the water until I come up with a replacement rocker arm or come up with a way to make one myself. Now this is cast iron, and it probably needs to be replaced simply because if you take a look right here at the wear, look at the indentions that the tail end of the valve has put on this portion of it right here. This is worn down. My gosh, that's worn down 1/8 of an inch. This indention will change the distance that it's going to depress the valve. With it's worn a little bit, it's not depressing the valve quite far enough, so it's leaving a portion of the unburned fuel in the cylinder when it goes into the intake stroke again. So this really needs to be built up and repaired or replace the entire thing. So that's where I'm at right now. So like I said a little minute ago, we struck a stump. So if you take a look at this right here, this is a carburetor, very rudimentary carburetor. This is the fuel line. It's a 1/4 inch pipe that actually comes out of the bottom of the carburetor and comes over here and literally keeps this full of fuel. I don't think there's a float. Well, there might be a float. Yeah, there's a float inside here, and this is your throttle. You see the notches on this guy right here? There'll be a little thing that you actually rotate it to click, click, click when it's not worn so badly, and that'll be the throttle position. It's just a wide open intake back here, no filter or anything like that, and a wide open exhaust. Now typically this would have an exhaust on it, probably some kind of a pancake style exhaust or something like that. But that's what we have right now. So we are down for the count. Well, I'm not too concerned about that. You know, it's to be expected. You can't work on something quite this old that has not ran for a long time and expect to have a quick and simple fire up. So what I'll do is while I'm searching for the part, you know, or making the part, whatever I got to do, I'm going to go ahead and finish up, clean everything, you know, and pull the igniter out, make sure that's as nice looking as it possibly can. So hey, that's enough talking. I got to start working on getting all this thing cleaned up. And you know what? This is TractorMan 44, and I am out here, guys.